My name is Nick, and welcome to my channel, where I like to talk about scary stuff. Men is another art house horror film from A24 and Alex Garland's latest. It stars Jessie Buckley as a grieving woman who ventures to a village in the countryside of England for a relaxing getaway. Once there, she finds the male townsfolk surrounding her with all the wrong attention. You had me at A24 horror film, obviously, but the talent involved in this movie is what really had me excited. I love Alex Garland's work. He wrote 28 Days Later and Sunshine, plus he's the director behind Ex Machina, Annihilation, the limited series Devs, all things that are good 4 out of 5 for me. Plus, recent Academy Award nominee Jessie Buckley has been one of my favorite rising stars over the last few years, so seeing her play a heroine at the center of a horror film is enough to make me pay the price of admission. And I will say this movie has some impressive technical elements, including the lush cinematography playing up the natural beauty of the countryside of England that is juxtaposed with the horrors enacted to our main character on screen. And that's about it. That's it. Because unfortunately, this is what I call a disappointing failure on just about every level. I really did not enjoy this movie. In fact, it was a slog to get through as I watched it, and it really isn't even that long. But I walked out of it initially going, well, I guess it was like a perfectly fine movie, I guess. It just didn't work for me. But the more I think about it, and this is why I've been enjoying doing reviews a little bit later in the game lately, because as it sat with me, I think this movie is kind of fucking awful. And I do want to point out right off the bat, for anyone who is spoiler sensitive, I guess I will be talking about spoilers. I mean, I don't really think this is a movie that you can actually spoil. If you have seen the trailer, you've mostly seen the movie, except for the like bonkers final act, but like, there really isn't anything all that interesting there. We'll get to it. But if you are spoiler sensitive as I am and you want to see it as blind as I did, I'm glad I didn't see the trailer. Otherwise, I really would have hated this movie. But go watch it for yourself and then come back and finish the video. I knew I was in for some trouble when our main character Harper arrives at the countryside house that she's rented and she picks an apple from the garden. And I was like, okay, we're getting biblical with it. It's Eve in the Garden of Eden bringing sin upon the world by picking the forbidden fruit. Okay, Alex Garland, whatever. Then this scene played out.
Apple from the garden?
Yeah, it was delicious.
No. Mustn't do that. Forbidden fruit.
Oh, God, sorry,
I'm joking.
And this pretty much sums up my entire feeling about the movie as a whole, in that it feels like Alex Garland sat down with a woman and heard all of the ways in which women feel oppressed by men, and then just sort of like threw it all into a screenplay without actually writing a story. And I read in an interview that he initially wrote this screenplay like 12 years ago or something, and honestly, maybe if this came out like over 10 years ago, it could have worked. It maybe would have seemed ahead of its time. But as someone who like, I don't know, actually cares about women and like actually has had discussions with women and has known women my entire life, this feels like so condescending and so surface level. Like, this movie's bullshit. I'm sorry. Men is pure bullshit. And for any women who really did enjoy this movie, absolutely leave your comments. I want to hear why, because I am confounded by that. Let me be clear. I am so about what this movie wishes it was about, like the messaging at the center of it and the way that women are treated by men. I am all for blowing that shit up, but the way that it is presented in this movie is so surface level and flat. I just truly feel like it is condescending to the audience. There are shades of folk horror that I could have used a lot more of in this movie, but ultimately even that seems to be used against what the movie wants to be saying, and it doesn't make sense because Harper comes to this little village where all of the men are played by the same actor Rory Kinnear, and I guess they're supposed to be connected to some sort of like folk legend guy thing, which totally takes away from the message of the movie, because if this is all about the way that men treat women and how Harper deals with men, then to say that all of this behavior and all of these problematic men are linked to this one thing really seems to take away from the entire problem, because it is a widespread issue. It is not something that can be reduced to one villain. On one hand, I do think this movie is ambiguous enough that you could project what you want onto it and get the movie that you want out of it, but at the same time, I really feel like there is no complete full story here. And while I like to read into movies and I have fun with that, I think if the movie is only presenting what you create for yourself, well then there isn't much movie there. One of the biggest issues I have is that our protagonist, Harper isn't much of a character at all. Jessie Buckley is fantastic and watchable, but she isn't given much to work with. She mostly just wanders around and reacts to shitty male behavior. She's a widow sorting through a devastating event, and she should have layers and growth and an arc. And again, I do think this is open to interpretation, so maybe this is just my read on the ending of the film, but basically, I feel like this entire movie is Harper sorting through this event in which her husband died and basically taking a look at all of the behavior she's experienced from men and kind of sorting through that and processing it and realizing she should not deal with it. But the way that it kind of comes together in the end just sort of feels like bitches be crazy. Another thing that I think is contradictory from a stylistic standpoint is that actor Rory Kinnear plays the majority of the male characters within the film. On a basic level, the acting showcase is given to him as opposed to Jessie Buckley, which just doesn't sit well with me. This movie is supposed to be about the way wide swaths of men treat women in general, but by reducing all of that behavior down to one actor, it just seems to take away from the overall narrative, which I think is a stupid directorial decision. When I initially walked out of this movie, I thought, you know what, it really doesn't work for me and maybe some people will like it, but it was technically impressive enough, so I guess this is kind of a 2 out of 5 sort of movie, but again, the more I think about it, the more basic I really think this movie is. Even when you get down to the visuals, it's pretty simple. Anytime Harper is outside, it's very green and lush, signifying life, and then whenever she's inside this house, it's very oppressive with these red walls. Outside good, inside bad. I mean, it's just not deep at all. During the flashback scenes that show the audience what happened to Harper's husband, there's a red filter over everything, again painting the film an all too simple good or bad visual style. Like most A24 horror films, I feel like it's either a love it or hate it situation with very little room in the middle, but this is a movie that I think does not deserve your good interpretation. I think this movie is simply bad. There's no story, there's no characterization, and as far as the solid visuals, I mean, it's pretty much just like, thanks England for being England, otherwise this movie is giving you nothing of its own. One thing I will say before I head into the grading breakdown, the one thing that I appreciate about this movie is the way male nudity is used. I feel like anytime there's an A24 movie, you're bound to see graphic nudity pop up in the rating, and here we actually have a man who's naked most of the time in a very like creepy and oppressive way that I thought was interesting, but that's literally all I got, guys. That's all I got. For the concept, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5. Jessie Buckley starring as a woman in the beautiful English countryside dealing with shit men and fighting off home invaders should be an easy 5 out of 5 for me, but the fleshing out of the material, or lack thereof, is unforgivable to me. As for the execution, I'll give it a 2 out of 5 because it has technically good physique from a mechanical viewpoint, but like I said, even the best parts of this film are really quite basic. And for the entertainment value, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5. Not even Jessie Buckley's performance could keep me on board. I was falling asleep through the damn thing. As the film played out, I actively became less and less interested until I was actively hate watching it. For my personal grade, I'm gonna give Men a 1 out of 5. While I do think there are some decent technical achievements here, as I said, it started out fine and then just became worse and worse until it became a grating experience that has weighed on my psyche over the last few weeks since seeing it. That's the worst damn thing I could say about any movie. Now I want to talk about the actual ending. Like I said, I'm talking about some spoilers, but I'm really going to talk about some spoilers. So at the end, Jessie Buckley, she's in this house. She's constantly fighting off all these different men who keep coming in and out of the house, but as that's happening, nothing really of substance ends up occurring, so it doesn't really feel like there's any weight, there are no stakes. I wasn't thrilled by any of the home invasion happenings, and I love a good home invasion, so the fact that the horror elements fell flat there for me, I mean, just again, unforgivable. But so then there's this like weird creature vagina man thing who keeps like birthing one man after another, all of these like men that are tormenting Harper, and again, I guess you can read into it however you want, but the way I see it, it's just men pass on their shitty behavior from one to another, and men learn their shitty behavior from other men, and it's like a snake eating its own tail. It's like this problem that's constantly feeding itself, and like, I don't think that's deep at all. I don't think that's deep. I don't think that's interesting. I don't think that's cool. I don't get anything out of that. Like, it's so surface level and obvious. Like, you might look at it and go, ooh, nice effects, some body horror, some stuff. But like, what does it amount to at the end? Like, what does it amount to? It amounts to nothing. It amounts to nothing. But what did you guys think of Men? Love it, hate it, I don't really care. I want to hear what you have to say, because I think there could be multiple different opinions on this. However, I do feel like most people hate it, and for good reason. Even though this has like a decent Rotten Tomatoes score, I want to say it's like a 70%. I think that is way too high for this shitty movie. I think this movie's shitty. I think it's downright shitty. Like, I thought it was like, fine, didn't work for me. No, the more I think about it, the more I hear about it, the more I read about it, I'm like, no, this is just so surface level boring. There's nothing interesting about this movie. Okay, I better stop, because I'm just like hate ranting, and I don't like to do that. I want to hear your opinion, especially if you did like this movie. Let me know what you think. I would love to chat in the comments. To everyone else, thank you so much for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it as always, especially if you made it all the way to the end. Sorry that I am so distant from this channel and I am not uploading a whole ton, but I love your support. I thank you so much for it, and I'm gonna keep trying to squeeze in these videos. So thank you guys again. That's it for this video, but I won't stop you from watching another.